Hi, this is Goddess Johnson, CEO of Fight LLC, and you're listening to White Canes Connect.
Hey there, PA Federationists. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am the treasurer of the Keystone Chapter. Joining me today and sitting in for Lisa is Keystone Chapter First Vice President, Stacie Leap. Stacie, what's on tap today?
Hey, David. Always glad to be here. Today we have Goddess Johnson. She is the CEO of Fight LLC. And that is an acronym that stands for Faith is Getting Her or Him Through. And this podcast, she talks a lot about her story and the services that she provides with Fight LLC and just how she is just an amazing motivational speaker and visual rehab teacher.
She really has a great story, and it almost makes you feel bad to think that you're worried about just being blind or just losing your sight. Listen to her story and you will see that just going blind is a walk in the park compared to everything that she has been through. So let's take a listen. Goddess, thanks so much for being with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for having me.
It's so wonderful to have you on this podcast, Goddess. I don't really remember how we met because we always been connecting through email and playing email tag. And then finally, I finally met you. So I can't really pinpoint the first time I interacted with you, but I do remember the first time I actually met you in person was in New Jersey for Crystal's community baby shower.
Yes.
And I remember coming to your table and I was like, this lady sounds familiar. Her story sounds so familiar. Then you said your name and I was like, oh, it's me, Stacie. And it was just a wonderful experience to finally put a name and a voice to a person. And just hearing more about your story, I just had to have you on this podcast with me and David and just talk more about you and the business that you have that's so inspiring to others.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I can't say thank you enough. I know it's so funny when you were telling that story because I can't remember either. I always know Stacie over the phone and talking. And that's why when I said my name and I kept listening like, wait a minute. That's why I jumped up. I was like, finally. Okay.
But definitely tell everybody here, who are you and your blindness journey?
Absolutely. Well, my name is Goddess Johnson, and yes, that is my real name. I have to put that out there. But I am originally from Houston, Texas. I currently now reside in Orlando, Florida. And as for my journey with my blindness, I do not suffer from an eye condition of any sort. I was perfectly sighted for 28 years. And I had a lot of obstacles through life prior to, my journey with my blindness. So needless to say, I have to tell a little bit about that for you to understand how it definitely impacted my life. I grew up, as I stated, with a lot of obstacles. My mother was incarcerated when I was 7 years old. And so at an early age, I had to undergo dealing with that and having to, have to go through the system. And it was always me and my siblings, and that's all we had. So I was determined not to kind of follow in that whole stereotype of being a system kid, even though having to undergo a lot of the stereotypes that come. I went through a lot of physical, emotional, different abuse, which led to me being emancipated at 17 and taking on the role of the custody of my younger sister. So I persevered through that, graduated high school, was the first one to do that. Went on to college and began my career as in the medical field. I always wanted to help people. So being a nurse was something that just came like secondhand to me. I was happy to be able to be a role model for my sister and show her a different way because we unfortunately, both of my brothers were incarcerated at later times and they're both doing life sentences. So it was just to show her something different, which led to her wanting to be just like me and going to school. She was in the process of becoming a nurse as well. and I was working in the emergency room. And just like any other day, I worked at the overnight shift from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. Got off of work with my sister and proceeded to pick up my niece from an after hours daycare. And on our way home, and I was in a tragic car accident, which resulted in me how I lost my sight. I remember being in the car one minute and then coming to, and everything was dark. But that wasn't the most devastating thing. I was told, just hearing a voice, I couldn't really move myself or say anything. I really didn't know what was going on. And I just remember a voice telling me that I was, coming to, I was waking up. I had been in a coma for over 9 months, and I had lost my sight due to the impact of that accident, as well as my sister and my niece. So that became the turning point in my life, with losing my sight and losing someone that was so important to me. And so that's how my blindness journey began.
I'm so sorry for your loss again, and it just shows the resiliency that you have, because even talking to you now, even as you talk about your story, there's still an air about you that you just try to find positivity in everything.
That's actually the way I got through, Stacie. I mean, a lot of people went in the beginning. When I remember my very first time sharing that story openly, I could barely get through it, but the one thing that I remember from that day, which, up until 2 weeks ago, marked 5 years since I shared my story and began speaking, was the impact when someone came up to me and just told me how much it impacted them, and somehow through my pain, strength came, and that took me back to that day. I thought everything was over with, but even though I had to undergo like over 2.5 years of rehabilitation to learn how to, be mobile again, walk, talk, speak again, from not being, in a coma for so long, you have to go through all of that. But when it came to my sight, I can honestly tell you I didn't know nothing about rehabilitation or anything. I just was given a card and I couldn't read it, and then going home to the reality that I was a mother. And how could I explain now the mom that once left my child going to school and hugging them, dropping them off, was now I couldn't even walk from the car to the house. Looking back now, I mean, and when I tell people it was the best thing that ever happened to me, you have to understand it taught me how to fight, which that led me to who I am today, and that's how my whole journey got birthed, because that was an acronym for me. And that stood for faith is getting her through, because that's all I had through that time. I didn't have the resources, so I had to use my faith. And with the help of my now he was 6 years old at the time, now 8 years, on how to, learn how to get through life now. And I couldn't see, and we began our journey. And it's been just something I just will have been life changing since then, growing up with having a son, and as he's learning how to, mommy learning how to walk without being able to see, and him helping, and going from learning how to cook to learning how to help mommy clean. So we were talking about earlier, balancing a checkbook. That's something my son knows how to do, which back then I wouldn't have thought it was. I thought I was putting so much on him, but he enjoyed mommy and him being a team, and from there, when, I began, also, as I have shared before, which for some I was going through being in a situation where I ended up getting pregnant again with my second child. And now this was a pregnancy where I could not see anything, and learning or trying to wrap my head around that whole concept, of what am I to do now, and how am I going to get through this? This was a different journey, but I was able to develop within that time, utilizing my skills for being a nurse, who back then I didn't know how much it would change my life. Now I was able to develop different techniques, different tips, different ways of preparing myself to become a mother now without vision, and be able to assist others in helping me. And even though I was told that I would never ever see her, I was able to do that and accomplish that through that same faith and the same determination.
How different was it between the two kids? You have the one child where everything is pretty good, you can see and everything else, and then you have, I know going into it, it must have been frightening to think about, but after all that you had been through, at some point a switch must have gone off and say, hey, I did this, this, and this. I think I can do raising a baby again without sight. How different though was it between the two kids?
It was a tremendous difference between the two. It really was, because whereas everything, even though it's your first, when you're going into this and you're becoming a parent for the first time, you have the anxiety of, it's my first baby, I want to do everything right, even though I didn't really know what I was doing. But then this time it was that anticipation, but it was still a joy. I was still happy with. Then the second pregnancy with my daughter, it was more of, I couldn't enjoy it because every other second I was worrying, or I was, had this anxiety of how I was going to, could I do this? Couldn't I do it? So it took away from me being able to really embrace and enjoy the experience of being pregnant, with my daughter. And then when I found out I was having a girl, it was such a difference, because it's different. It was different things I would have to do, different ways I would have to do things. So more mentally and emotionally, it was so much harder. But like you said, until that moment where it actually was from, ironically, I went to a doctor's appointment and was getting close. And with my daughter, I had to have a C-section, which was something different too, because of the some of the operations I had. I couldn't, go through a natural delivery. So I knew when I was going to have her and things like that. And I had to go to in my appointment like norm. When I remember having to go to the hospital to do like the pre-paperwork to check in, they were almost as if the questions and the way people were asking was almost like I was doing an interview as to whether or not I was going to be able to do this. And I guess within me, from other experiences in my life where I felt like I was putting up against something I couldn't do, it became a different thing. Like, no, I can do this. Like, I was almost like determined, like, why couldn't I? How could I not do this? I've done this before. I would just have to, really prepare. That's all I kept doing. I just got to just think it through and come up with my own ways of getting through this, because I felt a certain way when I felt as if I was almost being questioned as to my ability to be able to be a mom, since I was now blind.
When I was pregnant with Alana, like you said, that emotional and that mental toll that you put onto yourself, like, can I, could I, should I, would I, all the woulda, shoulda, couldas of your life, but then for me, holding her in my arms for the first time, I was like, you know what? I can do it. I don't know how, but I'm gonna do it.
But I'm gonna do it.
I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
And so initially, like I'm telling you, I always get all emotional when I saw you, and we spoke about that, because initially it was the way they reacted. And then I'll never forget, like you said, the day that I had my daughter, even though I couldn't physically see her and I was so emotional over that, I couldn't see her. But the moment they put her on me and I felt her, and then I was able to hold her, it's like, everything else didn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Like, I owed it to her. Like, I'm going to be, everything that I can be, you know what I'm saying, for my daughter, and as well as like I fought for my son. So that's how my journey began. And that's what I've been doing every day since then.
Yeah. And kids definitely make you grow up a lot faster than you want to, but definitely much needed.
Absolutely. They're that strength.
Yes. And you were talking earlier about, adapting to different techniques and stuff. You actually have a curriculum out now too, right?
Yes.
To teach other blind parents.
Absolutely. That became my mission in life. So, because I never ever wanted I never ever wanted a new mother, if you were like me, going from, sighted to immediately not being able to see, and you had gone through, so I never wanted them to feel the way I felt. You know what I'm saying? So even though I physically couldn't do some of the same skills that I had in nursing, I still could have a way to help and to actually educate. So like from that experience going through later on down the road, when I made it here to Orlando, I came here to undergo some procedures because they told me I would never ever see again. So I was actually came to Florida, on another faith walk, going through Baskin Palmer in Miami and going through a series of surgeries, which how I ended up learning about visual rehabilitation, schools for the blind. Never knew about any of this, but because I had went to an appointment and I had took this transfer, I was taking like the bus and things like that. Never knew about paratransit. And it was just someone that had saw me and they were like, oh, you must have went, you get around so well, you must have went to the lighthouse. And that was the first time I heard about this lighthouse. And I'm like, no, what is that? And she was saying like the school that teaches people like you. I was like, people like me. And she's like, yes, they when you can't see. I'm like, and this was like the first time I ever heard this existed. And so I was listening, took the information from her, contacted, found out about Division of Blind Services, which led me to the lighthouse. And I remember when I first went there, I was like, oh my God, there's places that teach you this stuff. I remember walking in and all of this like knowledge, all these computers talking, it was a whole nother world that I didn't know about. But it was funny when it became to the independent living skills classes. When I went through the test, they were like, you already know how to do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, and you never been. I was like, well, I taught kind of how to learn, for myself. So, which I had to tell that story to tell that I went through the training. I was fast tracked. It was supposed to be 6 weeks. I started, I think, on like the 4th week and I graduated. And I remember telling my instructor, I'm going to do this. I can do this. I can do exactly what you're doing. And that's what I actually did. I went through the program, got a scholarship, went to college, went back to college, got my master's degree in visual rehabilitation. And I remember one of my first classes, I had a young lady who she was just like 4 months pregnant, and the child's father was blind as well. And we have a point in our class where we do adjustments to blindness, and she was sharing how she was going through a lot because her parents were feeling like she couldn't take care of her baby, and her and her child's father were blind. And I'm like, and I remember like, no, I'm like, we're going to talk after class. And I remember talking to her and I was like, I could share some of my journey. I shared my story with her and I was like, I will help you. And that's where it began. My manager at the time, Judy, she sat down and we designed, I was like, I can do classes, for people who are expecting, so can be an extra, skill that we can teach. I don't mind. And so that's where it started. They were my very first kind of couple. And I worked with her all the way up until the time she had her baby, went to our hospital here is Winnie Palmer. And I actually went there and spoke to the nursing director. And I talked to them about the different techniques as far as how to assist a mother who is proper ways you can talk to them to help them navigate, to help them be able to be more familiar with certain things. If, certain things like breastfeeding, latching on, cleaning yourself during that time. If you have a little boy, if you all these different things, which entailed help them be able to assist working with women who had this different need and be able to assist them properly and it started a whole training and a curriculum, which is something that I'm able to do now with my own LLC and give new expecting mothers that may not have been, without vision problems and now are and have had babies. And I have different techniques, different items. I worked with Ideal Baby Store. I found different items that were accessible that they didn't know that were accessible. And I put together different curriculum, different resources, and I give those trainings to people, whether they're here in person or virtual. I'm able to give people that independence. And that's one of the greatest things that I am able to do, that I really am proud of, being able to give that feeling of just enjoying motherhood back to a mom.
So when you talk about doing this coursework or class that you're teaching the other moms, is that something that you do in a live setting? Do you do it over Zoom? How does it all go down?
I do both. So I worked at the Lighthouse for 3 years as an instructor. So in addition to teaching the independent living skills classes to blind and visually impaired adults as well as young adults, and that was a separate class that they offered after the pandemic. Um, a lot of work went remote, and I actually transitioned into a different field during that time due to the school not being active and things of that nature. So I actually began social work, but being as though I designed my own LLC during that time as well, I'm able to meet the needs. So if when they reach out to me, if they're here local or around, I'm able to set up to go to them in person to do the classes that I held, or if it's via Zoom, it's basically on their request. If they're locally, a lot of times it's live one-on-one, or if not, I can do it via Zoom that allows me to reach a wider audience.
And I think as we've learned throughout the pandemic, Zoom has made things a lot easier. If you're in Topeka, Kansas and have an interest in what you're teaching,
you can get that information.
Jump right on. Yeah. And it just makes it a lot easier for a lot of folks.
Easier. And also just like you said, in those areas where even like myself, being as though I'm thankful that I'm, have the certification to do visual rehabilitation as well, because there are a lot of areas to where they don't have access to the schools to the blind and different things like that. And being able to I teach all courses. So this is one special course that I teach. I can also do independent living skills. I can teach, I can do everything, remotely as well, to be able to reach more people out there that want the independence and don't have to wait. If you have a phone with a capability now to have an app where we can do live, I can help you, so it gives independence to a lot more people. And I'm so thankful for technology for that.
Talk a little bit more about what else your company does. So you do this instruction. I'm assuming it's fee-based. You have to earn a living. How much is a class?
So I usually do sliding scales because the fact I do have my main source, I kind of work with the person based on their income. And I never wanted it to be something to wasn't feasible. So I do it on a kind of case by case basis.
Okay.
And then of course, because of the type of person I am, even if there isn't a means that they can do, that they're able to, I'm thankful, and to the point that I can still be able to assist, because I still want to give that to someone.
What else does your organization do? What else besides, is it one set of particular classes? Are there different classes that you could have moving forward, or is there other components to Fight LLC?
So there's other components. So what I do is, of course, I do independent living skills courses. I do the parenting classes, preparation classes. I can CPR and first aid certified. I do those classes as well. I also do youth mentoring. I am a certified mentor. I've been involved with the Big Brother, Big Sister program for over going on 11 years now. So I'm very involved. I do youth empowerment classes, which are basically, I give classes to youth that are considered at-risk youth that are in group homes and alternative facilities, similar to the way places that I came up in. And I go in and I do empowerment classes, life skills classes. We do one-on-one peer mentoring, counseling, and I do conferences as well. I'm also within that whole component as well. I do motivational speaking on all platforms. So I'm also booked under my LLC to do motivational speaking, whether it is speaking from the topics of blind and visually impaired, domestic violence survivor, an advocate for human sex trafficking, any platform that I have went through, I speak on. And so in a conjunction that's with partnering with other community organizations to raise awareness and do collaborations with like-minded organizations, that's basically what Fight LLC does.
So it can be very tailored to someone who may be struggling in one particular aspect. And I'm guessing because of that, you can work with them to a point to build someone's confidence. Let's say with, you had mentioned a few things with the mobility and things like that. Now, is that something you can teach via Zoom? That seems like that might be kind of hard.
No, the mobile, now that would be something that would have to do more in person, and you can talk about the basics, the fundamentals, but you would definitely I definitely would refer to an actual, O&M instructor, which I educate myself. I'm luckily with the ability of me being a motivational speaker in so many places. I have interacted with a lot of different people from different places, and I have a lot of resources of people that I can utilize as resources that kind of work with me in various different, parts to where I'm able to at least get you to someone that can assist you or lead you within that direction. But as far as that would probably be the only thing that would be kind of hard to do if I'm not right there. And then sometimes I do try, I am always somewhere. So I'm happy. I've been to probably 37 of 50 states. So I know quite a few people in every place. So it works in my favor.
For the classes that you offer, do you promote all over the country?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you also said about a sliding scale. Would you be able, or can you, if someone wanted to get like their blind commission or Bureau for the Blind to pay for those classes, would that be an option for payment, or would you only
Yes.
do like per person?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yes, Stacie, yeah, no, you can do it, partner, because I have contracts now with DBS, which is Division of Blind Services, where they pay for independent. It's called an independent contractor. And then I have people that will reach out to me because I do market all throughout the U.S. and I'm actually involved with 2 missions group. I have already went on one missions trip where I have was sponsored. I actually had a sponsor that sponsored me to go over and be able to assist. It was 35 people, and I was a part of a team. So I was the independent living skills instructor as well as with the parenting course. And there was a O&M, and there was also a certified Braille that just specialized in Braille only that could reach more. So I was a part of we went over there and we did a mission trip in Johannesburg, South Africa. So I was happy about that. I have something set up after this was before the pandemic, but we had talks. Our next place was going to be Lima, Peru. So this is something that, because it's actually needed so much, not just within the US, but also, in other countries that don't have the skills training or the ability. And luckily, like once again, if they're with the technology, you're able to assist. And thankfully, there are organizations that do sponsor and enable that these classes can be given other than here in the US.
A lot of folks that you help have, as they are going through their blindness journey, especially at the very beginning when they're like, oh my gosh, now I can't see. What am I going to do? The world is over. What kind of battle is that for you when you're trying to help them learn whatever it is, whatever skill you're there to teach them? And I know everyone goes through it to a degree. Some people, it takes a lot longer to get through it. Others, and it sounds like you are on the shorter end of that because you're very resilient, it sounds like. And to me, all the other things that you've been through, blindness is just like a paper cut.
Exactly.
To things. So talk about that. How difficult is it to get folks to get their head in the game and stop thinking that everything is no good now and life is over? That has to be a pretty big challenge.
And you know what? Ironically, and every time I get this question, it always, when I say the answer, it's always seems so basic, but it's the honest to God truth. A lot of me getting through to people and having the type of response to get them to continue to fight or endure is a lot of me having to tap in and share my story. That's how the speaking part came afterwards, because I learned that the only way to really connect when you're dealing with someone, I looked at I put myself in the same, try to put myself in those shoes, coming from someone who's been fully sighted to totally blind. I was totally blind for almost a little under 11 years. And now with being visually impaired, because of after all that time and all those 11 years and all the operations, 47 eye operations, 5 cornea transplants later, something they told me could never happen. They were able to restore the sight in my right eye. So I have tunnel vision. With the use of a special lens, I'm able to see perfectly out of my right eye. And so from being someone who can really talk to somebody, from, I can say, I know what it's like to be sighted. I know what it's like to be totally blind. And I know what it's like to be visually impaired. But I have to use a lot of times, not just that, just the whole journey. So it becomes I take the time, each person, when I'm assessing them, I'm listening, and I'm really listening. And maybe it's a gift. Some people say that I have, I'll accept that, but I'm able to tune in on where I can start to be able to get through to a breaking point. Because just like you said, the blindness to some may seem like it was nothing for me to deal with because of everything else. And that's where it became my own power, because from going through so many obstacles and so many situations of pain, I'm really able to speak from there. And when people can have a real life, this is a real life person that's actually can tell me it's going to get better. Even though you may not feel it right then and there, it may be months of working, even years, but it allows them that little bit of hope to continue to go. So it takes me a lot of times, which is probably why I sound so resilient now, because I've been saying it now for almost 12 years, the same story. So it has began over the years, built a strength in me, because my pain, for me, it has been hope and inspiration for so many others. So that's how I get through. That's how I'm able to connect.
I totally agree with that. I remember when I first went blind, I was like, I don't know any blind people.
Mm-hmm.
How am I supposed to go through this, And as through trial and error, and then through, talking to my visual rehab trainer, my VR counselor, my O&M instructor, I was able to meet other blind people. And eventually I found myself here in the NFB, and then just meeting so many people that are doctors and lawyers and college
Mm-hmm.
students and this and that. And I'm like, wait, hold up. Your life
Yep.
is not over?
Yeah.
So then I
You
start
don't have to
realizing
stay
that,
locked
wait,
in that room. Yeah.
exactly. So then you start to have that glimmer of hope, like you said. And you're like, maybe I can get through it. It took me a few years to get out of that funk. But once I like you said, sharing your story, hearing other people's story, that peer support, realizing that you're not alone, it gets you through a lot.
A lot, because for a lot, that's the biggest obstacle. When you just feel alone, you feel like nobody understands. And of course you can have, well, for me, I had my friends that I had before, losing, oh, it's going to be okay. But to me, if they telling me, like, what do you know? You know what I'm saying? Like, you could still get up and do everything, going through that whole thing. But like you said, once you get out here and it's so much more to this life, the NFB. And then I was like, oh, I could still do this, and then getting involved in community service, and then traveling. And then it's like the sky's the limit, and like you said, I felt like I was me, and to be able to have that connection or be a part of bringing that for someone else, that's been the most rewarding feeling for me, and it gives me that same sense that I used to feel, back in the day when I was in the ER and I was able to physically hands-on save lives. I still feel like I'm doing that, just in a different way. And that's what the whole blindness journey has been for me. Just coming to the grips and being able to say, I'm still me. I just do things differently, but there's still nothing I can't do. And that's the greatest message you want to give, especially when you're a parent.
I make fun of well, not really make fun. I always tell everybody, I'm gonna try to be like you when I grow up. I tell that to David. I tell it to the other co-host Lisa. I tell that to you. Because it just, hearing everybody's story just makes me realize that I can be a better person. Like, I don't have to stay in this corner and cry my eyes out and just feel like I need to be pitied. Just seeing all this success people around me, it's amazing.
Yeah. And you just always have to remember, like I always tell people, like, and I always like to point that out. And I tell people the person that you hear today, the person that whether you are able to see me or just a lot of people say they see my smile, even if they can't see me, but who I am today is definitely not the same person I was almost 12 years ago when this happens. It takes a journey. It's a journey and it's a process. And I tell people all the time, I have days where I just don't want this. I just don't want it. I can honestly say that. The only difference is now I know that it's just something I'm feeling for the moment and I'll be able to get through it. So even through just always know that it never just automatically just happens overnight. It's definitely a process and it's definitely okay to have the days when, what do I say? Stacie, it's okay not to be okay. But you're going
Totally.
to be okay. And that's what makes all of our jobs so important, to be able to have these platforms to share these messages, to give the resources and to let you, it can be a lot easier. It doesn't have to be that hard.
And I think that's definitely a key point, is having someone who has gone through it and to show another blind person, hey, well, this person did it. And, they went through so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
I only have the blindness thing to go through. I should be able to get through this. And I think that's the most powerful thing for me when I joined the NFB, learning and seeing that all these blind people had regular everyday jobs. They weren't down at the factory making mops or brooms or whatever it was back in the day. And they work for these important companies and businesses and school districts and whatever. And it's just enough to get you going. Hey, if they can do it, so can I. And I always question with that. I always question, if this person, not blindness related, in business related, if this person who seems as dumb as his thumb can do it, why can't I do it? And that's this. And the same thing with blindness. If somebody sees me doing something, obviously, then they can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have special skills. It's just something you just have to take. Like you say, you got to take the leap and you got to take action and just do it.
Yeah, it's 100%. Like I always say, our response is our own responsibility. How we choose to respond to this will determine your outcome, and that's what it was. And, for me, it's just something about, it was one thing working with older blind and people who were around, within my age range. But then when my biggest inspiration that I would say that gave me the momentum, no, get it together, Goddess, was, I'll never forget her name was Hannah. And if you out there, my Hannah Banana, she was only 5 years old when I met Hannah. And Hannah was born totally blind with no hands. And let me tell you something, this little girl was amazing. She was amazing. Nothing stopped her. To me, she had more vision than people who had vision. And she could draw and she would do art. And I was just amazed, And I was just like, that was if she can do it, I can do it. Because when I wanted to feel self-pity, I could go in, even through the days that I was being this pillar of strength. That little girl was my strength. And being able to, like you said, introduce, and for me, bringing my kids were along with me through every step. I was a teacher. They were there. They would come to every family workshop. My son was always a volunteer, and it put a different ethic within them. And, and I often shared, now being a part of the blind leadership cohort, which I'm a part of now. And I have just met so many mentors who are all blind and visually impaired. And like you said, they're working for Google and they're doing this. And I'm just like, this is awesome. And I remember telling my daughter when I called her and I was telling her, she was like, see, Mom, she was like, that's what I tell my friends when they be complaining, like, you don't know nothing. Cause my mom, if you know the people that she be with, they can do everything. So we better not complain. But it's the words like that, because that's our future and that's our legacy. And at least they will never have to look at somebody, my goal, and see if they're blind or visually impaired, think they have to just only be the people, like you said, they working in the shops, putting together mops. No, they'll remember the Stacies who are writing books, and they'll remember the day. They'll have real people to be able to say they still do the same thing. And that's what we should be doing it for.
Where can we find you? How can we contact you? All that good jazz.
All the good jazz. Well, I do have a website, which I did provide that information. So I do believe you guys will have that, so where they can access my website, Fight LLC. You can find me, of course, on all social media platforms, Facebook, under my name, Goddess Johnson, or Goddess Thrill Killed. And I'm also on Instagram under the real.goddess. That's Goddest.
And we will put all those links in the show notes so folks can reach out there. And is there anything that you might want to mention that we haven't already brought up?
It's just very important that, there's always a resource out there that you may be, sometimes it's hard to step out and just ask for help, but don't ever be afraid. There's always a resource out there that can assist you. So always reach out to best see how you can get through whatever the situation or circumstance may be. There's always a resource out there. So definitely utilize that aspect each and every day. It helps make life a whole lot easier.
Goddess, thank you so much for coming on today.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks again to Goddess for coming on and telling her story. And what an amazing story it is. And again, to think that you are worried about just having to deal with your blindness. Think of all the things that you heard from Goddess today, talking about everything that's gone on in her life, Stacie.
Yes, her resilience is amazing. Like you said, we go through so many struggles, so many hurdles. Blindness is just a little facet of it. And to hear Goddess' story and realize that we can persevere, we can do so much. We just gotta push through. And that's exactly what her company is about. Fight. Faith is getting her or him through.
Yeah, it really is a great story, and I think that's the key, is the resiliency of people to just push through. Don't be afraid. Just push through. And sometimes it may take you a little while to do that, but just get through it. Take a little step at a time.
Yes.
Chapters and divisions throughout the state are having different fundraisers. We'd love to talk about them. So if you've got something coming up and you've got a chapter or your division is doing something, we want to hear about your fundraiser too, whether you're in another chapter within the affiliate or another division. Let us know what you're doing. Even if it's something small, we'd like to know to help support you and help you guys raise some more money. So again, reach out to us. Give us a call, 267-338-4495. Leave your name and town. You've got up to 3 minutes to tell us what you've got going on.
If you're not a phone person, you can definitely send us an email at whitecanesconnect@gmail.com. You can leave, like David said, show ideas, feedbacks, comments, questions, concerns, all the good and bad stuff. Hopefully more good than bad.
We really do appreciate you listening. Again, reach out to us and let us know what's going on within your community, within your chapter. And so we can get the word out and help you guys do the best you can with whatever event you're planning. Again, 267-338-4495. Let us know. Shoot us an email, whitecanesconnect@gmail.com. Stacie, thank you so much for filling in and bailing me out today.
No worries. Thank you for always having me. I really enjoy it.
And thanks everybody out there for listening. Take care.
Bye.